and the essentials of sportives. So we're going to get cracking here. Tonight, presented is myself and the fellow director Dan Fleeman. So Dan, if you would like to say hello.
Hi everybody, welcome to the webinar this evening.
Cool. You'll see here on your wee GoToWebinar panel, you have the ability as well to ask questions on the chat at the bottom. So if anybody would like to, please feel free to put questions in there during the webinar, and we'll do our best to try and get to them at the end of the. Hello, sorry about that. I think I didn't have my screen showing there. In case you didn't hear me, we're just going to go through our webinar here on Sportives Essentials, and with me here tonight is Dan Fleeman. We're obviously a global coaching company, and we're very have a large presence around the UK and Ireland, and coaching, and obviously going all through from Sportives to time traveling to road racing. And again, we're hopefully here tonight to help everybody learn and understand. Some of the stuff we'll be going through will be stuff that you already know. Some of it might be new things that you're learning for the first time. We're covering quite a broad range of topics, but hopefully we'll be able to get as much out of this as possible for everybody. So so let's get cracking. So, and if anybody has any problems with their mic, or they're not hearing this properly, just again put into your chat thing at the bottom, and we'll do our best to try and get through. So, okay. Here we go. So, okay. So, how to be prepared? This is what we're going to go through. Setting goals, the importance of setting goals and why they're crucial to really everybody's development. Essential checklist, really things you need to look at even before you start your targeted preparation. Really things just to really get organised and get prepared. Progressive training preparation. We're going to go through different ways of preparing for different styles of sportives. Some of you here maybe aiming at local sportive events here in the UK and Ireland, and maybe some of you are heading towards Europe to look at the bigger alpine style events. So we're going to go and try and think about as much as possible for all them. Pacing and techniques for climbing, again essential especially for those doing the more alpine style events. So again, we're going to hopefully cover the basics on that, and also the training that you can use for climbing. Essentials on tapering for your event. Again, it's critical that you try and make sure that 7 days to 10 days leading up to your event is honed as well as possible, because all that hard work in the 2-3 months leading up to it can obviously be affected by your potentially your lead up in the coming days. Okay, so we're looking at the night before as well, 1 week night before. Nutrition, we're going to go through quite a bit on nutrition at the end. Again, nutrition, from our experience working with many athletes around the world, they can at times have a great event and be really physically fit, and the only thing that lets them down is their lack of nutrition choices and not having a correct nutrition strategy. So so we're going to hopefully try and go through that and make sure that's all right. Okay, so first thing is about setting your goals. So being realistic and making sure that you obviously have realistic goals and you know exactly what's clearly set out. I mean, for everybody here, it's very important that you have a really good clear goal that you know that you want to achieve, that you understand what you want to achieve. Again, it's all about making stuff measurable, but not so much making it too out of reach. Sometimes whenever people set their goals maybe far too ambitious, it can be deflating at times. But sometimes, obviously, whenever you have them too easy, then you don't feel the willingness to potentially try as hard as you can. Using smaller B events as stepping stones. When we're looking at maybe potentially 2 to 3 months out for a larger sportive, maybe a summertime Gran Fondo, or maybe maybe a bigger alpine sportive. Using smaller events, maybe in your local area, looking at your nutrition strategies potentially for them smaller events, again, are great to test out in the smaller events. Looking at potentially how your climbing is, or how your endurance is in these smaller events. So whenever you are going to your A event, obviously you've spent a lot of money, you have a lot of time, investment, training, going to these A events. You want to get all the niggles out, and obviously the smaller B events. So I think they're real critical to have at least 1 or 2 of them, maybe in the 2 or 3 months leading up to your A event. And lastly, but not least, is using previous experience to help new ambitions, to keep their overall goal your priority. This will help during bad patches. By that I mean you will obviously come in on bad periods. You might come in on periods when you're ill, periods when you're sick, periods whenever you maybe are detraining, or with family and work life taking over, you don't have that time available to train what you were looking to do. So use your experience to really make sure you keep that focus on the overall goal. Don't lose sight on the smaller interferences that can affect it the way up. Don't let that obviously dampen down your enthusiasm. Make sure that you have it clearly set out of what you want to achieve, where you are at this point, and don't be too concerned with obviously going through the bad patches and trying to look at things in the bigger picture. Again, from a coaching point of view, we find that as coaches, that's probably one of the most essential things that we can help with, and one of the best areas that we can help with, being obviously outside of the the emotional attachment to all of the hard training that you're doing and all the dedication you're doing. We can look at things probably a little bit more clearly, and obviously make it a wee bit more wee bit more structured, and obviously making a better judgment on where you are right now, and making sure that you're getting to the place that you need to be without having to worry about days off, or being ill or whatever, and keeping everything on track. So again, that's very important certainly from the offset. Okay, the next one is essential checklist. Proper bike setup, essential for bike handling, efficiency, and injury. One of the large areas of sportives is obviously being able to handle your bike in potentially large groups. Again, specifically for the hillier, more mountainous events, you have to look at going down large, steep climbs, maybe with tight, narrow roads, with cornering, which really requires a very high level of technique. And a proper bike setup really has a major impact on that. I see a lot of people maybe with a vastly wrong bike setup. Maybe their reach too long, maybe their handlebars are too wide, or certainly their seat is too low and they can't get the proper angle going in and out of corners. And that can obviously cause, very poor bike handling skills, and also cause lack of confidence as well going down some of the bigger mountains. So, especially before you start doing big training blocks, it'd be really good to try and get a proper bike setup by a professional. And again, obviously for injury prevention and efficiency. Injury checklist. Are you able to handle the training load? Again, it's coming down to looking at potential weaknesses that you've had. Probably looking at what you've done maybe the year before. If you were going towards a big event, maybe you found halfway in your training preparation that your knees were going, or you were getting sore backs after certain rides, etc., etc. Take note of that and try and adapt that and use that information to change your training and change your fitness, and to change obviously potentially your core, or muscle imbalancement, and really looking at that there. So again, that there is as important as obviously the riding itself. Illness and immune system. Keep healthy and you will improve. Immune system is really, if we have a bad immune system, we're not training. If we do try and train with a bad immune system, it's not productive. So in that, prioritize illness and immune system. A lot of that comes down to your poor nutrition. A lot of it comes down to poor lifestyle choices. There can be things obviously that or we can't manage. We have family that are sick, or kids that are sick, or being around people that obviously we don't we can't not be around. So sometimes it's inevitable that we're going to get ill, but outside of that, we are going to look at some ways that we can manage it the best way possible, by having the proper nutrients in our nutrition, by looking at making sure that we're having the proper food and hydration on the bike and off the bike, and looking at some other ways of making sure that we're wrapped up and keeping healthy. So we don't want to ruin this weeks and months worth of preparation for your goal, sportive goal, with having a bad immune system. Equipment, is it all ready to take the punishment? Maintaining your equipment and safety is a priority. Again, unfortunately, over many years, I've seen a lot of people have fantastic physical ability, spend a lot of money on equipment preparation, for all of it to go to pot because the rear mac wasn't working halfway up the first mountain, or they didn't change their tires because the tires were cut and they continued to get punctures throughout the event, etc., etc. Small things that really are easily repaired or easily maintained in the weeks and months leading up to it, but have a dire consequence to your performance on the day because they have not been maintained, and this is something you really want to avoid. So going out of your way, spending, even if it means taking 1 or 2 days off your training in the lead up to the event, it's better having your bike fixed and having your bike maintained and properly having the proper equipment, than obviously having going there and not having the proper the proper information that's needed. So really you want to make sure that there's something that we try and keep an eye on. And is your lifestyle able to handle the stress of the training? Again, it comes a wee bit back to what I'm talking about probably the immune system and certainly your nutrition. Looking at your work-family balance. Again, going for sportives and you're training towards it. It is recreational. It is, it should be fun. It's not your full-time job to train every day as much as we would like to have it. So we do have to balance our training in around all these sort of things. So, we want to make sure that you have that lifestyle balance as well. And we certainly don't want to annoy any of our partners or anything whenever we're trying to get as much training as possible. So again, it's for you to try and, find that balance. Forward planning, training, nutrition, events, etc. A lot of what we're talking about is forward planning, and really the best that you can organize yourself, organize your diary, looking at events and trying to make sure it's as streamlined as possible in the months leading up to your sportive is really critical as well. So trying to get that as narrowed down as possible is something that we should all really look at. So there's the essential checklist. If everybody if you just even go through that and are able to really see and take a lot of points from that there, I think you'll be on the first steps to getting a really good setup in your preparation. So Dan, do you want to maybe go through start going through the points here in training and preparation?
Yeah. Okay, well the first one is a really important one, is to make training specific to the event. So obviously if your target event is a hilly sportive, you need to try and mimic the training to take into account the amount of climbing required to do the event, and then the duration of the event. So I'd look at, if you're looking at a sportive that's going to take 5 or 6 hours, you need to prepare yourself so you can do that volume of training. You don't have to do 6-hour rides every week or every day, certainly not every day or not even every week, but you certainly need to build up, as the weeks go on leading up to the event, you need to build up and bear in mind that it is going to be a long event. It's going to take a lot of climbing ability. Like the second point says, the emphasis on endurance and climbing ability. The majority of sportive events, they're generally long and they generally have a lot of climbing. So the big emphasis needs to be building that up in the training. you also a big thing on sportives is obviously if you're riding in a group, you can go a lot faster than if you're riding alone. So if anybody's got any local, chain gang type rides, a lot of certainly in the UK and Ireland, a lot of those at this time of year, midweek chain gangs. If you can go on those, maybe once a week, just learn and get used to riding the group, because you're going to be sat in the wheels. You're saving 30 to 40% energy than if you was riding alone. So you can easily ride along at 20-25 miles an hour in a group, but if you was to do that solo, it would take a lot of effort, and it's just not realistic that you can sustain that. And again, descending is a skill, especially if you're doing a big sporty, in France or in Italy. There's going to be a lot of descending, so there's no point in, really building up the climbing if you can't, descend down the other side. A big one is also if you can raise your threshold. So your we often refer to it as FTP, your functional threshold, which basically is the amount of power you can sustain for 1 hour. By raising that up will really help, because a lot of the climbs, long climbs, you're going to be sat riding up around the threshold, and if you're the higher your threshold, the less each climb's going to take out of you, and the quicker you're going to recover as well. So we often advise people do what we call sweet spot training, which if you're using power meter is 88 to 93% of your threshold. So the first thing you want to do is do a 20-minute threshold test, minus 5% off the average. That will give you the threshold figure, and then you do blocks of work, maybe 20 minutes or 2 by 20 minutes, build it up at the sweet spot, which is 88 to 93%. For those of you using heart rate, it's more around 95 to 98%. Again, like we've just touched on, climbing ability is essential. So obviously the handicap we've got here in the UK and Ireland is we don't have the big climbs, we don't have the big alpine climbs or the Pyrenean climbs, but you just have to use your imagination a little bit, and if you go out and you do a 3 or 4 hour ride, just try and accumulate up to an hour of climbing at around zone 4, so threshold, and that could be made up depending on where you live in. You might have 2-minute climbs, 3-minute, 4-minute climbs, you might have 10-minute climbs, but if you try and accumulate around an hour, certainly on a big weekend ride, accumulate around an hour of climbing at a high intensity, that will set you up well, because even if for something like Alpe d'Huez it's a 1 hour climb for most people, so it's but that obviously that's in one block, but if we don't have that available to us here in the UK, so you just have to use your imagination, and if you can still do 2.5 thousand meters of climbing within a 4 hour ride, it's really gonna help. If you can try and do that once a week, it would be a big thing. And again, the big focus for us is, or the big thing for us is, we always focus on quality of training. So for a sportive, you still need to do, you do need to do some big rides, some endurance rides, because it is a long event. But certainly people with time restraints, you are much better off focusing on the training. So if you've only got 8 hours a week or 10 hours a week to train, that's fine. You can achieve a lot with that. But there's a big difference between going out and doing 15-16 mile an hour average, for 10-15 hours a week. Whereas if you go out and you do interval type training, really high intensive training, but you can only do 8 or 10 hours a week, that's great. You are gonna improve a lot more than if you just go out and ride steady miles. Because at the end of the day, you got to remember, a sportive isn't a steady event. It's it's a long event, but it also includes lots of high intensive efforts, you know, on the climbs. So
yeah. Thanks for that, Dan. I think I'm just gonna maybe expand a wee bit on what Dan was saying there about some of the sessions and the training and whatnot. So using higher tempo rides to boost endurance. A little bit on what Dan was saying there about the you know, starting to build your AFTP, starting to build your functional threshold. When we look at tempo riding, the best way to describe tempo riding isn't riding at a leisurely pace or an endurance pace where you feel like it's comfortable to talk, but riding at a you know, a real solid ride where you feel the pressure is being put on the pedals for the whole time. You know, anybody with a reasonable fitness should be able to sort of maintain this sort of effort for 20 minutes to 40 minutes in one go. Again, it's not hard enough that you feel absolutely exhausted at the end of it, but it's really one of them ones where instead of maybe on your usual route averaging 17 mile an hour, you're maybe going out and averaging maybe 19 mile an hour or 18 and a half or something like that. So it really is, you know, as unspecific as that it's just keeping a wee bit more pressure on the pedals. Riding in that tempo zone really has a really good effect on your training performance, certainly when it comes to training with limited time. So we're obviously looking at being able to make the most of our training, and that really does help our endurance capabilities. It helps your you know, your body's usage of fat as a fuel riding at that intensity. It helps us, you know, starting to build up that functional threshold, even though we're not maybe riding at that intensity. It's really good for that. And probably on a lot of maybe the longer climbs that you're doing, you will be actually riding at tempo in your actual event on the day. So, you know, it's good to get used to. Cadence efforts to increase your ability to handle different gradients. Everybody that does a sportive and everybody that does, be it one of the alpine climbs or one of the local climbs, you're going to hit certain gradients along the route. And you're going to be going from maybe 90 RPM or 95 RPM and a nice flattish rolling hill, rolling roads, to maybe a gradient of 15%. Certainly in the UK we have a lot of steep climbs, you know, a lot of short steep climbs that really pull the groups apart. And they can be, you know, you can be going down to maybe a 60, 70 RPM. You're trying to put out quite a high force at a really, you know, a low cadence. You know, maybe in around 60, 70 RPM. So you've got to get your muscles used to doing that. You've got to get your technique used to doing that. So really look at, you know, the actual characteristics of the event. And, you know, for those people doing the longer sportive ones in the Alps, you're going to be maybe riding at a 70 RPM or 75 RPM for maybe 20, 30 minutes at a time at a lesser intensity. In the UK, you're going to be going up maybe, you know, 15% climbs for 2 minutes or 3 minutes on steep hills in the saddle, and you've got to again get your body used to doing that there. So, you know, look at your cadence as well as your intensity. A wee bit about that specific hill reps to develop technique, boosting your threshold, 8 to 20 minutes long. Efforts that are very much so at your limit of aerobic capacity are excellent, certainly on the last sort of, you know, the last block of training, maybe in the last 6 weeks leading up to your event. So really looking at that as a priority training session, certainly in the weeks leading up to it, is very important. So maybe, you know, 3 or 4 8-minute efforts in the per session. You can even do it in a 1 hour session. A very typical and popular training would be, you know, warming up for 10 minutes, then doing 20 minutes at threshold effort. You know, you're looking at maybe starting off at 7 RPE and finishing off at a 9 RPE over that maybe 20 minutes. Resting for 5 to 10 minutes and doing it again, and then having a short cool down. That's literally a 1 hour session, and has, you know, excellent, certainly excellent benefit both to your endurance, both to your threshold, certainly again your efficiency of being able to ride for prolonged periods of time at a higher intensity, which at some stage you will be doing during your sportive, no doubt. Improving your core, lower back, glutes, maximising your ability to sustain a hard effort in longer climbs. Anybody who's gone to Europe and done some of the longer events there and more hillier ones, they will see, you will notice certainly a lot of hard work being put into your glutes, a lot of fatigue going into your lower back and whatnot. So again, looking at that there and trying to balance that, especially those people who have maybe had injuries in the past, and maybe haven't incorporated it or neglected it in their training and found that it has had a detrimental effect come their event day, certainly look at that in the months leading up to it. So, it can be some very short 20-minute routines you can do at home or whatever that may be. Just try and incorporate that into your training. Limited to time, threshold work that include bursts with sort of mimic pace changes. So what I mean by that is going into that sort of 2 by 20 minute efforts, like I was saying, them specific hill reps maybe, but adding in variants of intensities within it. So maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds of a slight attack or a slight sprint during that helps us look at, again, trying to mimic the characteristics that you'll be up against in your event. So obviously we can't all the time be in exactly the same terrain, but what we can do is the equivalent of maybe coming to a hairpin is very steep, you have to up the intensity. What we do is in our training, we add in wee intensive efforts, maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds throughout a training session. These wee bursts are just to mimic pace changes and pace changes that you're gonna come up against in your sportive as well. Another thing just which is really important is being careful with bigger training blocks, i.e. 5 to 7 day loads can lead to overtraining and injury, illness. That sort of leads on to being consistent, but these sort of training blocks that sometimes people do, and it almost can be said as cramming your training. Maybe you're trying to get in as much as possible, and people start these training sessions and start these training loads whenever they're not really fit enough to handle maybe 5 hard days training in a row without any rest, because they thought, oh, I've been sick last week, or I was on holidays last week, so I've got to get a lot of training in this week. I'm going to do 5 days, really hard, and that's great, in theory, trying to get as much training in as possible. Whenever you're actually not fit enough to handle it, what happens is you lower your immune system, the quality of training isn't as good, and that, over a period of time can lead to actually a detrimental effect in your training. So, if you've missed time because of injury or illness or being away with family or just with work, don't panic. Don't try and add on training, try and catch up on training the following week by doubling it up. That's going to lead to problems down the line. So, just trying to be consistent in what you do is going to help your overall ability a lot more than trying to focus on big, hard training blocks, every so often, and trying to overload the system too much. So consistency is really the key there. Okay, so your do's and don'ts on your training. The do's, make your training volume progressive over a 3-month period. Again, what we're all here for today is trying to forward plan as much as possible. Increasing the intensity, easy threshold workout in the 6 to 8 weeks towards the event. What I had mentioned earlier on, excuse me, and what Dan had mentioned earlier on, trying to really build up the intensity and looking at, the going into more tempo threshold workout efforts as you sort of go towards your event, and not just looking at your overall volume. Okay, so we don't want to just look at, well, I've done 8 hours this week and I'm going to do 12 hours next week as a basis of how productive the training is. Let's look at the quality of it as well. Okay, so use B events to check fitness. Again, what I said right at the start, trying to use them events to make sure that you're getting through as much as possible and learn from as much as possible. Using cadence efforts, tempo rides should make a large portion of your training, especially in limited time. Again, what I said earlier on about using that tempo intensity to really help boost the endurance. 2 to 3 training blocks are great. We had to build endurance and avoid overtraining, so we're going away from what I was saying, that cramming training that potentially can happen. We don't really want to have that there in our books, and certainly the 2 to 3 days back to back are really good. So maybe 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, and then you build that to 3 days on, 3 days on, by meaning hard training or structured training, then having a day off or 2 days off, and keep your prep specific and each day quality. So we're making it specific to the event and making each day a quality, right? So we're not just cycling for the sake of cycling, we're cycling because we're trying to get something out of that session, out of that day. So the don'ts: avoid cramming training close to the event. Do not ignore injuries or niggles. Please do not come to your event 1 week before and still have a sore knee or still have a sore ankle or whatever. You want to deal with these things as they come along and don't. Be wary of overstretching a single training session, i.e. a 6-hour ride on a Sunday leaves the rest of the week unproductive. Again, do not try and feel that you have to cram all your hours in a week into one session. Again, it comes back to the consistency is the key. So in that remarks, I would prefer somebody to do 3 hours on a Sunday and then being able to do 1 hour or 2 hours on a Tuesday and Wednesday, than to do 6 hours on a Sunday and not being able to do anything productive until potentially the Wednesday or the Thursday. Even if your event is going to be 6 hours long, it's still better to have the consistency in the smaller sessions being put in and cram them all into one session. Focusing on steady endurance rides and avoiding the specifics of the event. You're looking at making sure that you focus on steady rides and getting the hours in while you can. Again, if you're fit enough to get them in, and making sure that it's again specific towards the event. Being underprepared with equipment, get your tools correct for the job. Again, it goes back to what I said at the start, making sure that you have everything working, you have your gears ready, you have the equipment choice that you're going to be using on event day, you're using it in your training in the weeks leading up to it, and really trying to look at your equipment and making sure that your day isn't ruined by poor equipment choices. So, again, it's something we can all sort of do just with being organised. So we're going to go on to a wee bit on climbing. Climbing is probably the one thing that stands out in most sportives. Whenever we go to enter one, we're looking at how much climbing is in it, how steep are the climbs, when do the climbs come in, and it's usually one of the most daunting things that we kind of look at. So let's try and look at how we can help deal with the longer climbs. Okay, so riding in an effort just above your endurance pace or below threshold, normally the zone you will be riding in during a longer climb, 5 to 15 kilometers. Kind of like what I said earlier on, that's probably in around your tempo zone, just before you're starting to hit up into your threshold. That sort of intensity is what you're going to be riding at whenever you're going on the climbs. So you want to make sure that you're used to that in your training as you progress. Excellent core glutes and lower back, making sure that's efficient, making sure that your back and your glutes are capable to potentially climb for maybe in a 6 hour or 7 hour sportive. You could be climbing for potentially 2 hours of that 6 hours. So you've got to make sure that your lower back is capable of taking that sort of training and that sort of intensity for that length of time. So making sure that there is as strong and is as efficient as possible will certainly have big benefits on your event. Ability to ride at a cadence that is both comfortable and maintaining a rhythm is essential. So 85 to 95 RPM is essential for most terrains. Once you start lowering your cadence really below sort of 85 to 80, you're starting to rely on a lot more strength recruitment to keep your momentum going, to keep pushing on the pedals. And once you start using that, you're looking at really breaking down muscle or breaking down your system that is going to use up a lot of energy quicker and won't be able to maintain the effort that you're doing if you are being able to ride at a higher cadence. So riding at a higher cadence, you use your aerobic system a lot more. Your aerobic system isn't going to tire as much as your using strength and your muscular system is. So by helping your body learn how to use 85 to 95 RPM, ride at a little higher cadence, again, is really important to try and do. Keeping technique, using in the saddle and out of the saddle efforts helps climbing performances. So everybody sees some of the best riders in the world. Some of them, like Contador, like riding out of the saddle for prolonged periods of time, and then you get guys like Wiggins, they like riding in the saddle for prolonged periods of time. It's exactly the same ethos as what we bring to the sportives, and certainly on the climbs. Everybody has a different technique and everybody has something that they should be comfortable with. But what I will say is that you've got to try and train and teach your body on how to ride on something that you're not comfortable with, because more than likely during the event you're going to come to a point where you have to be out of the saddle for a prolonged period of time, or you're going to have to be in the saddle for a prolonged period of time. So look at changing your technique a wee bit just after that and get your body used to it. Avoid prolonged periods using a lot of muscle strength, i.e. being over-geared. I think I hit that earlier on, making sure that you're having a nice supple cadence and you're not trying to use too big of a gear and you're using a lot more muscle strength, which obviously can tear a lot quicker. Improving your power to weight ratio is key in climbing. We all know that. You know, it's probably the most critical part of your performance is your power to weight. So looking at your nutrition coming into the event, you know, making sure that you try and go there as healthy as possible. Certainly you shouldn't be going in there as weak as possible by, you know, cutting down a lot of calories, but going in there as healthy as possible and as trim as possible is always nice. So relaxing the upper body, the arms slightly bent, keeping your jaw, neck relaxed helps with the breathing, rhythmic breathing. A lot of people get very tense in their upper body, starts to tense up your chest. You can start to see it in people's arms. You know, again, that's from every level of cyclist. When they get onto a hill or they start to get fatigued, you start to see the upper body tense. One of the first things that it is before they start to really lose their performance. So teach yourself how to be relaxed in the upper body as much as possible. Try and get used to rhythmic breathing, trying to keep your jaw and your mouth and whatever relaxed, making sure that you're trying to get deep breaths, rhythmic breaths, and that is one key that will help you in your climbing. Certainly for those doing the longer climbs in the European events, it's really important to get that. And avoid going too deep in sections of climbs. You will regret it. You know, if you have a climb that is maybe 2 or 3 kilometers long and there's 700 meters of it very steep, and you really, you know, decide to really dig in and put a big effort on a steep part to drop your friend, or, you know, you want to maybe get the Strava on this climb or something like that, you know, you are going to regret it later on and you are going to pay for it somewhere. Like, so, you know, again, try and keep it calm as much as possible. Obviously coming into the finish, the end of your sportive, you know, you want to maybe use a bit of energy that you have left, so keep it for then, but try and avoid going too deep earlier on in the event. So, Dan, do you want to maybe go here on how to taper and prepare in the week leading up to your potential event?
Yeah. So obviously, building up to the event, as the weeks go on, you're going to increase the amount of volume of training and also the intensity. And then as you get close to the event, like the week before, you obviously want to back off so you're fresh and you're ready come race weekend. So you'd reduce the total volume, duration or volume of the training, but up to 50%. It's a good, you know, rule of thumb. But it's important that you still maintain some short, intense rides. So you'd still want to do at least 2 intensive rides in the week leading up. That's, you know, really important, that if you just completely cut your volume down and also the intensity as well, you know, it's going to have a negative effect. You're going to really feel blocked on the race day. So by keeping the intensity there but reducing the volume will allow the body to, you know, really freshen up for the race. But also, yeah, avoid any activities that are going to risk injury. So, you know, it's probably not a great idea to do a bungee jump, you know, 2 days before the race, or, you know, just be careful. Certainly, if you're going on a midweek chain gang regularly, and perhaps avoid it that week, because, you know, you don't want. I was out yesterday on a chain gang, and there was a bit of an accident, a crash, and, you know, if you was going off to France to do the Marmot on the Friday and you come off and break your collarbone on the Wednesday, it's just not worth it. So I'd avoid any risks there. Keep the entire week, you want to keep hydrated. A lot of people, and I'm probably guilty of this myself, they get to the Saturday before a race and they think, right, I haven't hydrated enough, and, you know, you drink loads and loads of water and, you know, electrolytes and fluids, but it's important just to keep on top of it the entire week, and in general, you know, if you work in an office, you know, keep some bottles of water in your desk, and just, you know, drink a couple of litres, you know, spread throughout the day. Just keep on top of your hydration levels. The day before One thing that people tend to do is, a lot of people think, oh, the day before a race I won't ride my bike, you know, I'll save myself. But it's always good to do a good, you know, to do a decent ride or do a ride, just to spin the legs. Make sure your bike's working. Make sure, you know, the body's working as well. Maybe just throw in just a couple of little sprints, a couple of short 1-minute efforts, you know, just to preen the muscles, get the body ready. You know, if you don't ride at all, especially if you spend the day travelling, you know, you will. Often at the start of the event, you just feel a little bit blocked up. It might take you a little while to get into it, and you know, if it's a hilly event and you're straight into a climb, you know, it's not a good thing. So I'd always advise definitely riding the day before the race. Don't change anything majorly either. You know, the week leading up to, so don't suddenly decide the night before the race that you want to try a different type of food that you've never eaten before, because you know, or big thing is don't change any energy products either. You know, anything you go there with, to a target event, you want to be tried and tested. So, you know, don't suddenly, you know, go off and play squash or something that week. You know, you don't know how that's going to affect you. So, just try and keep everything as normal and stick to a, you know, tried and tested routine as possible. Again, don't be changing any equipment. You know, don't decide 2 days before the Marmot that you want to start running 175 cranks instead of 170. You know, if it worked for you up to now, just, you know, just go with it and use what you know works, rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to get an advantage. So yeah, don't be changing any equipment, and I wouldn't be putting a new chain on or anything like that. Make sure any equipment that, you know, any mechanical repairs that need doing, I'd get those done, you know, a week or 10 days before the event, so everything's got time to bed in. Really important to make sure the week before the event you get a lot of rest as much as possible. You know, get some early nights, just let your body recover, tapering down. You know, you're backing off the training, but you also need to, you know, if you're backing off the training to freshen up for the race, but you're staying up till 1 o'clock every night watching, you know, videos and things, that isn't going to help. So you, as well as backing off the training, you also need to increase, you know, try and get as much sleep as you can, get some early nights, really take care of yourself. Yeah, and then avoid, I mean, it's difficult with work and family, but try and avoid stress as much as possible.
Okay, and a little bit just on the night before the event. Again, it's crucial, as Dan said, to be as relaxed and as stress-free as possible. So some of this will maybe help with that. So having your bike and kit prepared, ensuring your bike is clean and good working order, having that all done the night before and going to bed knowing that everything is ready and working. Post-sportive food bag and recovery drink. You know, have the drink and you have your food that you want for after your event already set out, so you're not looking for it. Organise any spares and equipment you might need for adverse weather conditions. Again, you know, especially in the UK and Ireland, weather can change very quick. You know, if you're travelling somewhere, I would always, you know, overcarry stuff going to an event in your bag. You're better having too much than too little when you're looking for it. So making sure you have enough of that. Avoid eating too late or overeating to avoid stomach discomfort. So, you know, you don't want to be getting into, you know, a hotel potentially at 8 o'clock at night, then trying to get dinner at 9, 10 o'clock at night with an early start at potentially 7 a.m. Kickoff. So, you know, you really want to try and keep as normal routine as possible. Ensure all registration documentation is done with the numbers. Don't want to stress of that in the morning. You know, aiming for at least 8 to 10 hours sleep. You know, sometimes that's not possible depending on travel arrangements. But if you are arranging and trying to organise stuff, trying to organise it with you know, as good sleep pattern as possible. Again, you know, you've done all this hard training and all this hard work. You want to maximise the sleep that you have and the rest that you have before it. And the more prepared you are the night before, the less stress you're going to be in the morning of the event. So obviously that's going to bring around us a real good benefit. Event pacing. have a clear goal finish time and average speed before the start. I think most people would have that before the start. They would have a thought of what they want to achieve. Don't lose sight of your goal time and increase your speed and effort, essential for the first 70% of the ride. By that I'm really meaning don't get carried away in the first part of the ride that you're going to blow up later on. Okay, so try and stay as disciplined as much as possible to your goal finish time. But in the last 70% or the last 20-30% of the ride, that's the time if you want to open the taps and you want to start taking a few risks in your effort, that's the time to do it, because the consequences of blowing up aren't as bad as what they would be if it was in the first half of the ride. Keep your rhythm and not to someone else's. Goes back to keeping your pace and strategy. Don't go to somebody else's rhythm. Going too hard in the early part of the ride will have dire consequences. Again, exactly what I've said. Just trying to be disciplined in that. Try and keep a good group in the flatter rolling terrain. Don had mentioned about the saving that you can have by riding in the wheels. Can be up to 40%, if not more, 50% of energy saving by riding in a group. So on the flatter and rollier terrain, try and get into a good group that you feel comfortable, a good rhythm. Maybe it's pushing you a little bit, but you feel it's worth it for getting that extra speed and getting a bit ahead of yourself. So something that you feel comfortable with, and that obviously you're safe in riding in a big group. And don't panic in the ride. Keep a focus on your performance and avoid outside negative interference in your performance. So, even if other people are complaining about the weather or other people aren't happy with how they're going, or whatever, you try and keep clear in your thoughts and make sure that you are, you're very focused on your effort and what's happening. And just one there was adjusting your goals for adverse weather conditions. If it's a howling wind, it's raining a lot, maybe you'd set a finish time at 5 hours. Don't be disappointed if it's 5.5 because you've been riding through a torrential storm or high winds. It's the same for everybody. So your performance hasn't decreased. It's just the conditions that you're in has deteriorated, which has led you not being able to put in the performance that you would have liked. But that's just cycling. Unfortunately, we're an outdoor sport, so but just don't get disheartened if you feel that you have to change. Okay, so pre-nutrition, pre and during event. I know there's a lot of questions coming in on that, so maybe this might clear up some questions on nutrition for the event. Checklist. There's one thing you're going to do, take away from this, is look at this checklist and really take it and make sure that it's something that you're all using on your day-to-day event, just before your event. Are you staying overnight in accommodation? If yes, are your normal foods available in a local shop, or do you need to take them with you? Simple, always take the basic food that you would normally eat. You feel that you're going to somewhere foreign, or you feel that there's somewhere that you're not going to get your normal foods and you're quite particular in it, or you have issues with other foods that you can't eat, take it with you, be prepared, make sure you have it. If yes, you need to and you early need a pre-race breakfast. Can your accommodation provide what you need? Have you got a B&B? Have you got a hotel? Is the start at 7 o'clock? You need to have breakfast at 5. Can the hotel accommodate that? If not, bring your own, organise your own food, have it all set out well in advance before you get there. And what energy drinks and bars and gels do you need to take with you from home? Maybe the organiser is supplying some gels. Just make sure it's a brand that you're well used to, but always take your own. Always over-prepare that you take your own. What time will you have your pre-event meal at, and what will you have? Again, just coming back down to being organised, have that set out. Practice eating what you're going to eat on event day, maybe in a bigger training session or in the MB goal events that we were talking about. So get that used to. What will the range of temperatures be? Could it be humid? We're going to Europe. The temperature is going to be vastly different, so again, change your nutritional strategy for that. How many feed stations are there? Do we know when the feed stations are? Do we know how much water is going to be available for us, what distance that they're at? Making sure you plan which ones you're going to stop at, how much you're going to carry in the bike. I normally carry a little bit extra. We always have what I call the safety gel in the pocket. One for if things start going really bad, you always have a bit of a safety net. Will you carry anything on the run, or just rely on feed stations? Again, have that well planned and know which ones that you're hoping to stop at. And what brands of bars and energy drinks are available. Like I said earlier on, get used to the brand that the event is potentially sponsored by and the event that they're going to supply. So, you don't want to be stopping halfway around the event and being sponsored by a brand that maybe is not doesn't agree with you, so but you have no choice to get it, so you want to try and get used to that. What is the duration and intensity of the event, and how much carbohydrates and liquids do you estimate you'll need? So hopefully I'm going to answer that question for you now. Okay, so pre-event morning, your main goal the race before is to arrive at the start line adequately fueled and hydrated. Is going to help your performance, but similar strategy can also help you get most out of the training session. So by using this strategy on some of your bigger training sessions is really going to help get the most out of them, but also really going to help you get the most out of your race day, your sportive day. So eating between 2 to 4 hours before an event, your meal should contain, from 100 to 200 grams of carbohydrates, maybe a little bit depend on each person, but I'm usually in the ethos of trying to get at least 120 grams of carbohydrates in the before an event, certainly lasting over 3 hours. Low in protein, fat, fiber to prevent gastric problems. You don't want your stomach being able playing up because you're having high quantities of protein and high quantities of fat and fiber. Certainly you want to try and keep that down. Obviously bit of protein is obviously very important, but what we're trying to prioritise is the amount of glycogen that we're starting with. Slowly drink 6 to 8 mils of fluid per kilo of body weight, so that's around probably 500 mils for a 70 kilogram athlete in the 2 hours leading up to the event. So sipping at fluid, trying to make sure you're well hydrated. You don't want to start the event certainly dehydrated, and adequate sodium and salt intake, especially if we're in the warmer climates. Making sure we'll have some of that maybe the night before, the morning of, if you feel like you're a little bit dehydrated or it's going to be warm. And maybe some people are more deficient than others, starting to look at maybe a little bit of salt intake. Your thirst and urine colour is very good to determine. That's really, I think most people know, it's one of the best ways to determine your hydration. But one thing that can affect your urine colour is supplements. So people who maybe take some sort of supplements, vitamin tablets or whatnot, can have an effect on that. So even though maybe your urine colour might be a little darker than normal, you might think you're fatigued. Sometimes it can be the excess from the vitamin tablets. So just make sure you have you think of that as well. And using there's an example of 50 grams of carbs is maybe 2 medium to large bananas and 1 large bowl of cereal, a 60-gram bowl of cereal. So if you think of that as 50 grams of carbohydrates, and we're kind of looking between maybe 100 to 200 grams depending on your body size in the 2 to 4 hours leading up to it. So maybe that will give you a small bit of an idea of how much actually carbohydrate that you need coming to the event. Okay, so during the event, your muscles can normally store, if fully fueled, in and around 300 grams of glycogen, and your liver can then store up and around another 100 grams of glycogen. So between them there, you keep them topped up, openly stored, you should be able to have 400 grams of glycogen in your body as the event, or at the start of the event. And what's critical is that we're able to keep maintaining high levels of carbohydrate intake and maintaining that without having any gastro problems, without having any digestive problems, and making sure that we're able to get the fuel in the body as quickly as possible and efficiently as possible. So that's the average carbohydrate stores of a 70 kilogram athlete, if fully replenished, and certainly before an event. Okay, so what to do? Carb intake can exceed up to 90 grams per hour in longer events, 3 hours plus. That might sound maybe quite a bit to a lot of people, but for those of you that have done the longer sportives or big endurance events, and certainly the competitive riders out there, from the professional riders doing some of them big long mountain stages in the Tour de France or classics, they would be certainly looking at taking that amount of carbohydrate. I would really advise not going any lower than in around 70 grams of carbohydrate per hour, especially over a 3-hour event. Once you start doing that, you're probably not replenishing enough glycogen in your body to maintain the intensity throughout a 5, 6, 7 hour period that you might be on for. So really trying to get that and getting your body used to taking that amount of carbohydrate on a bike is critical, and that's something you should be training as well. So trying to train your stomach, take that amount of food on a bike during your event is to be done in your big goal events and also in your training sessions. Mixing fructose and glucose will bring great results to longer events. A lot of energy fuel now is coming with a ratio of 2:1 glucose to fructose, so you'll see plenty of that branded about. Eating between different solid food types with better nutrients like rice cakes, sandwiches, etc. Don't just be relying on gels or relying on the sugar that's in your drinks. Look at sort of solid foods as well. We don't want to do a 7-hour or 6-hour sportive on just gels, because again it can be hard on the stomach, and again the taste and whatnot's great. Again, a little bit of the nutrients that you get from proper food can have big benefits as well. So higher portions of carbs can increase gastro problems. So test your methods before. Like I said, make sure that you're testing your ability to take them high quantities of carbohydrates in the events in your training in the weeks leading up to it. A higher rate of work, harder the effort for longer climbs, leads to a greater carb increase used by the body. Be conscious of that on event day. Okay, so I'm doing a 20-minute climb or 30-minute climb. I'm obviously going to use a lot more, glycogen stores than what I would do if I was riding on the flat for 20 or 30 minutes. So again, change your nutrition strategy adequately for that there. Dehydration can lead to an increase in your heart rate and lowering of cardiac output, thus lowering your performance. Dehydration, again, probably the number one reason why a lot of people fail to perform as good as they can do, because they've failed to keep hydrated. Drink and eat. If you keep that going in your head during the whole event, or even write it down on your stem, something to keep reminding you, it's absolutely critical. So recommended at least 500 mils to 1 litre of fluid per hour. Again, it depends very much on the sweat rate. It depends on the environment. If you're in more humid, hotter conditions, that's going to increase. If you're going to be in colder conditions, you might feel like it's going to need. But one thing, in colder conditions, some people feel that they don't need to drink, or they don't have the requirement to drink, and they can get still dehydrated. So if you're in colder conditions doing a sportive event or a longer endurance event, please keep prioritizing the hydration. Again, it can be a big step on the road to not performing well by becoming dehydrated. So we've went through quite a lot, and I know we're now just on an hour period. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through some questions that people have asked. Thank you very much. If anybody wants to put in some more questions into the wee box there, so please just type away, and we'll try and get through as many as possible. We'll try and get through 4 or 5 here now. So okay, here's one that says, any tips for losing weight while still maintaining energy for training and riding events? Dan, is there anything, tips for losing weight while still maintaining energy levels for training and riding events? So I think that's balancing training and nutrition.
Yeah, obviously there's a balance, because if you cut down calories too much, you're not going to be able to do the same intensity of training, which will have, a negative effect. So one thing I've done in the past is, if you by increasing protein in the morning, helps you, so you're not just gorging throughout the day. So if you include maybe a couple of eggs or some protein shake with breakfast, it helps you feel fuller. And having a good breakfast, like a decent breakfast, means you feel fuller throughout the day. So if you only have a light breakfast and you go out training, straight away you're in negative calories, and it has a knock-on effect. And then by the afternoon, you're reaching for the biscuits. So that's the one thing. And then if you're doing, obviously, if you do a hard training session, you're doing another good training session next day, that's not the time to be cutting down. That's the time to be, refueling. But if you do a big ride and then the next day is a recovery ride, then you could, arguably cut out some of your carbohydrates in the evening meal between the sessions, because you won't need so much the next day. But there is a fine balance. You do have to be careful. You don't want to cut down too much that you the intensity of the training drops. So
yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you very much for that. Just another one, Dan. On would you advise using a triple ring if you were having problems with keeping a lower cadence, or a higher cadence? I suppose that should be it, trying to keep a higher cadence. Dan.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different gear systems on the market now. I think there's obviously the standard Fit 39, 53 gearing. For some people, it'll be okay if you have a maybe 11, 28 gearing on the back, but it's still quite a heavy gear. So there's this compact chain sets now, like a 34, 36 on the front, and you can go up to like a 28, 29. You can even go up to you can get some 30, 32. I personally would prefer to stick with a double at the front and just increase the size at the back. But it depends from person to person. If you really are struggling and you like to spin a lower gear, yeah, triple would be worth looking at. You probably wouldn't. Most people won't need a triple for in the UK, but if you're going off to Europe, then it's possible you might need it. But I'd probably try a compact first and increase the gearing at the back, the bigger ratio block at the back first, and then if that still isn't enough, then yeah, maybe look for a triple.
Okay. Thank you. Another one is how many calories should I consume during a sportive when I'm burning about 3,000 calories? Is it a rule to eat about 20 to 30% of that? I mean, I suppose we can be maybe slightly a wee bit more specific on the amount of calories that you're, I suppose, trying to consume maybe an hour. Again, it slightly comes down to a wee bit on your, on your own physique and whatnot. But again, we're looking at a minimum of around 70 grams of carbohydrate, which is looking at, I'm not sure, maybe 350, 400 calories. So it depends where you're getting your calories from and the quality of what you're consuming, be it from gels, be it from solid food bars, be it from your drink. But I suppose maybe in an hour you're looking at anywhere between 350 and 500 calories. You look potentially one of them energy bars that you get can be up and around 250 calories. You have a gel which is maybe another 120 calories. Then you're consuming maybe an energy bottle, a full litre, which can be maybe another 120 calories. So that all, I suppose, adds up. And again, obviously it depends on how long your event is. The longer the event is, the more calories you're going to have to consume as well. But I suppose in a rule of thumb, maybe between 350 to 500 calories. But certainly look at the quality of what you're eating as well. So hopefully that maybe helps you.
I think for most people, around 80 grams to maybe 100 grams of carbohydrate per hour would be about right for a long, intensive event. So, which is, one energy bar, a couple of gels, maybe a bottle of energy drink should be enough.
Okay. Another one, Dan, which is maybe up your street. Okay, I've got 11 weeks before my priority event, and until now most of my training has been endurance and low tempo based. I hope to raise my FTP as much as possible between now and the event. My question is, would you recommend long zone 4 steady state intervals or shorter high intensity zone 5 intervals to help raise FTP for a very mountainous sportive? Many thanks. So
I'd actually advise both. Zone 4 sweet spot work, longer blocks, maybe 2 by 20 minutes, building up. You could even build up to like an hour, straight off in sweet spot, or maybe two. You could even do 2 30-minutes, or maybe even 2 40-minute in a long endurance ride. You know, say a 3 or 4 hour ride. You could do like 40-minute sweet spot at the first hour and the same at the end. But again, you really need to build up to this. So don't just jump straight into doing 40 minutes. You need to start off, 15 minutes, 20. Do that for a couple of weeks. 20 minutes, but 25 minutes. Really over 10-week period. The last week you may have built up to do like a 40-minute or 2 40 minutes. And I'd probably try and do those, like, maybe, I guess for most people, if you're training 5 times a week, you'd perhaps do 2, possibly 3 times a week. You could do sweet spot, no more really. And then on the other days, or a couple of days, 1 or 2 days a week, I'd do some zone 5, maybe like 5 by 5 minutes, with 5 minutes recovery in zone 5. And then the other days you just do, complete day off or recovery rides. But yeah, they'd be the 2 sessions I'd really recommend. Would be short zone 5 intervals and longer sweet spot type intervals.
Okay, I think we've got through quite a bit this evening. What we will do now is we're gonna we've recorded this. Hopefully, it's recorded okay. We've recorded this, so we'll be emailing everybody in the coming days with the recording of the webinar. So you'll be able to read through it again or watch it again if you want to listen to me and Dan babble on for another bit, and maybe you'll get something from it again. Maybe what you didn't pick up in the first time. Again, if anybody would like any information on the services that we have, from our personalised coaching packages, from cycling, NTB, triathlon, power meter rental, and retail, as you see there, we have 3 months free coaching for every power meter that's purchased over £650. We do a very large range of power meters, and also we have nutrition consultations with some of the top nutritionists in the world, which work with some of the top riders in the world. So if anybody would like to take avail of that service, please email us at info@digdeepcoaching.com. We'll be sending you all out an email very soon anyway. And I'd just like to say thank you very much for everybody calling here and stopping in with us this evening. So safe cycling to everybody, and we look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.